Elected Service Delivery Advisory Committee, and just to indicate that we are indebted to our tech crew here because they've gotten us all together successfully, which can be quite a challenge when you're dealing with dinosaurs like me. In any case, we do seem to have a clear quorum present. My name is John McGlennon. I chair TSDAC and represent the Virginia Association of Counties, and am the vice chair of the James City County Board of Supervisors. And I'll call on our vice chair, Cindy Mester.
Good morning, Cindy Mester with the City of Falls Church. Honored to serve as vice chair and representing VML on TSDAC.
And I'll call on Dr. Smoot.
Good morning, Ray Smoot, CTB, Montgomery County. And I'm pleased to be able to say that I was one of the first passengers ever on Blacksburg Transit.
Hey!
Many years ago.
That's great. And let me call in Jim Dyke.
Yeah, Jim Dyke, former Secretary of Education, former CTB member, and representative DRPT, and happy to be here and a frequent rider of the Metro, and as well as other transit up in Northern Virginia.
Great. Noelle?
Good morning. My name is Noelle Pinkert. I'm the Organizational Advancement Officer for Hampton Roads Transit, and I'm honored to represent VTA on TSDAC.
Brian?
Good morning. I'm Brian Booth, the Director of Transit here at Blacksburg Transit in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I am representing CTAB.
Kate?
Good morning. I'm Kate Mattice. I'm with the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, and I am, like Noelle, representing the Virginia Transit Association.
Jamie?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Jackson. I'm the Director of Transit and Transportation for the City of Fredericksburg and Fredericksburg Go, and I represent DRPT.
And Director Robinson?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the TSDAC. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Tiffany Robinson, Director of the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation.
And have I missed anyone on TSDAC itself? Great. So, better memory than I thought I had. In any case, we have an agenda today that largely centers on the question of our comments to the CTB on the Merit Operating Assistance Program and the recommendations for changing that formula as a recommendation from DRPT. And so I believe that Zach Trogdon is going to handle introductions on this end, and we'll begin the process of reviewing after we consider adoption of the minutes from our last two meetings. So does anybody have any corrections or amendments to the meetings? Minutes of the last two meetings? I would just make a very quick editorial correction. I think Brian's name on the second set of minutes was BOTH as opposed to BOOTH. Just not a substantive change at all.
Good, thank you.
I'm sorry?
So I guess AI doesn't catch everything.
So I'm not hearing any corrections or amendments proposed to the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve?
So move with appreciation for the level of details in the minutes now.
Great.
And second.
And seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, now I think our next item on the agenda is to move on to the consideration of the review. Zach, did you want to take it from here?
I believe Director Robinson will be doing most of it. I will note just very quickly before she starts that I did correspond with you, Mr. Chair, about some of the additional comments and Vice Chair, and you all had asked to put together like a summary very quickly. It is a very high level summary. We're going to get that put out in the chat, or we've just kind of made a chart of the PDF of who commented. And so we'll put that out to where you can see that. I hope all of you got to take a look. Director Robinson may mention we had a lot come in on Friday, the last day, and so we were able to quickly summarize those. But yeah, any questions, we'll try to address them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
Director Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Zach, do I understand you're going to be running slides for me?
Yes, yes,
Okay, thank you.
best I can.
So before we get started, I really just want to take a minute and say thank you. It's been 10 months since March that we've taken a really close look now at how our operating assistance formula can better support all of our agencies across the state. And I just want to thank all the TSDAC members before we even get started today, and all of my transit staff and all of our consultants for all the hard work along the way. This process has really been about fine tuning, not reinventing the formula and the system that we already have. We wanted to ensure that our precious state dollars are delivering predictable, fair, and performance-driven funding statewide. So with that kind of overarching statement, let's jump right into our next slide, which I think is our agenda. Here's kind of our roadmap for today, and I hope to keep this fairly short for you because you have all seen it all before many times. I'm going to start with a quick review of our process and timeline and summarize what we've heard through public comment, and then we'll walk through the two operating formula options before we touch on our capital and administrative updates. And happy to answer any questions you may have at that point, and then I'll be turning it back over to the chair. So we have an opportunity to discuss, and you have an opportunity to voice your position. So I think our next slide can go to the next one, Zach. This is just a reminder of our progress to date and our timeline. We kicked off this process back in March and have been engaging regularly with TSDAC members, agency staff, and many of our local partners. I want to remind you again that these recommendations do not represent any type of complete overhaul of our formula, as was required in 2018 by legislation. DRPT staff has seen enormous volatility in the formula since 2018, with unintended consequences in our allocations. And therefore, we've worked closely with our consultants and briefing the members of TSDAC almost monthly along the way, and meeting individually with stakeholders and partners, and having webinars and listening sessions to rework over 30 different scenarios along the way to get us where we are. I believe this has been a fully transparent process. We have listened, refined, and brought changes that make sense in today's funding and ridership landscape that is very different than 2018's. And now that our 45-day public comment period has ended, we feel even more confident that substantively, these recommendations are the best for the program statewide. So Zach, what was the next slide? Evaluation of our goals, I believe. Here we go. When we set out to update this formula, or to do the 3-year statutory required review, we were focused on these goals to make it simpler, fairer, more predictable, more performance-based, most importantly, without creating unnecessary volatility that we have seen in the past. So in other words, we really wanted every transit dollar to be tied to actual outcomes as much as possible, not solely on inputs and historical spending patterns. So moving on to our public comments, I do want to talk for a minute about what we heard from our partners and from the public. Here's kind of the overview. And I do believe Zach, I don't know if you want to put it in the chat, but we did kind of try to summarize everything that came in since we had some more recent input. But I will say we received thoughtful.
Can you see? Can
Yes.
you see this table? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, we can
I don't know
share
if you
this
can make
then,
it a
yeah.
little bit bigger, but you can
Yes.
definitely see it.
Okay.
I will say we received very thoughtful and detailed comments from systems across the state. I think it's fair to say that the overall tone and support was supportive and collaborative, at least on the substantive front. We received several additional letters on Friday, the last day of the public comment period, and most of those focused on a similar theme of wanting more time to review and wishing the process was longer and more transparent. Many of these letters use the exact same wording. Many were from Northern Virginia. But most of our rural and small systems like Bay Transit and Fort County Transit applauded the new formula's focus on cost efficiency and fairness. VML submitted a late comment that also supported the changes, but recommended a bit more time for TSDAC input in future reviews. BACO asked for funding to hold agencies harmless if the recommendations are adopted. Overall, I think the feedback tells us that we're moving in the right direction. Just as we have listened and adjusted along the way during this process, we're going to do the same thing moving forward. We've talked in previous meetings about our scope of work that is going to go out soon for collecting additional data that we know we need, passenger miles traveled, data by mode of travel, whether it be commuter, fixed route, local route, paratransit. Once we have that data, we know we can do even more. And so as we've listened along the way in this process, we will continue to put those recommendations into place as we move forward. When we have this additional data and can take next steps in future years, we will try to do our very best to take all the comments we've received and put those to work at that time. We'll try to engage earlier and more often because it sounds like that's what the community would like to see. And so with that, let's move to the slide 8, operating assistance. So both alternatives today keep the 95-5 structure. That means that 95% is still based on sizing factors that include performance, ridership, cost, hours, and miles. And the 5% is awarded for performance. And so they just differ in how they smooth the performance data over time. Alternative 1 uses a single year of performance data. And the benefit here really is responsiveness. When an agency makes improvements, they'll see that reflected right away. We believe it's the most transparent version. Agencies can see how their performance affects their allocation from year to year. That's kind of what we were hoping for. Zach, you can move forward. Yeah, that's what I just explained. And so alternative, I'm not going to walk through all the details, but I will say, I guess I should back up and remind everyone, because we've had so many meetings with our consultants and our team walking detailed through the formulas. I'm not planning to do that today. I will say that I will remind you that the reason the changes were needed is because we believed the current formula was overly input driven with operating costs at 50%. So we've changed that and increased the performance metrics within the sizing. We believed that the multi-year trend adjustments were too complex and diluted the impact of performance over time. And the year-to-year variability really just made allocations unpredictable for agencies. And we've heard that time and time again in our small stakeholder meetings. So the new formula rebalances the sizing metric to increase the emphasis on the ridership inputs and service inputs, reducing the operating cost to 35% while still using it as a proxy for PMT and cost of living in the service size. I think we all talked over these past 10 months that that's important. And we received that feedback in our public comment as well. And then we created a dedicated performance set aside in both of these alternatives that the first one uses a single year of performance and the second one uses 3 years of average performance because you asked us for that second option. And we think that that is a really good way to emphasize and focus on performance and ensure and keep it a little bit simpler and ensure that that performance side of the formula is not diluted. So with that, we're on alternative 2. I think I just explained that, so we can go to the second step, which, as I mentioned, the 5% performance rule uses 3 years of performance. And let's see, Trying to figure out what I want to highlight here. I think that we talked about, I just talked about the performance side in with 1 year of data focuses on responsiveness. So I would say the opposite for the 3-year average. It will take a little bit longer for good performance to be reflected in the allocations. However, it does soften the year-to-year fluctuations on the performance side of the formula, which some larger agencies, I think, seem to appreciate. So again, we'll go back and answer questions at the end, but let's move on to our capital
That's all the
assistance
operating,
changes.
right? That was- yeah,
Yes.
capital.
And so although capital changes aren't necessarily within TSDAC's statutory purview, we've talked about them and shared them for transparency along this entire process. So we wanted to do the same today. We believe that these changes improve clarity in how we categorize and score projects, and they better align with federal state of good repair standards. So that helps agencies plan with confidence. We also heard in some of the public comments that they're really happy that we're codifying some of the actions and practices that have been taking place kind of behind the scenes anyway. These refinements, I think, include clearer subcategories, improved scoring for mixed projects, and a new incentive for strong grants management. So we believe it's really important to make sure that funding goes where it's needed without any added red tape. So we've received a lot of positive comments on the capital side. So I'm appreciative of that, and we look forward to putting those into play. In terms of our administrative changes, Zach, if you want to go to that slide. On the administrative side, likewise, we received a lot of positive support for these comments, and these are actually a result of the interactive process we've had with TSDAC and with our stakeholders. In many of our small meetings and in many of our TSDAC meetings, there's been questions asked and answered that caused DRPT to look internally at some of the administrative functions and find ways to be more efficient and provide more clarity in our formula going forward from our side as well. So we cleaned up some definitions and improved consistency across programs. There's no changes to eligibility or funding policies, but we think it's a better alignment and clarity. One key change will be that the deadhead miles over 20 miles will no longer count in the performance metrics for commuter routes. So this makes comparisons more fair across systems, and especially between rural and commuter systems. And it really just ensures that our numbers better reflect service efficiency. And that was one of our goals from the beginning. So this has been kind of a joint process where we're looking to revise the formula and at the same time looking to revise any capital and internal processes that we can make to achieve the goals we talked about in the very beginning. We've also, I think you can go to the next slide. We've also standardized the cost definition used for both sizing and performance in these recommendations. This consistency, I think, reduces a lot of confusion and ensures agencies are evaluated on all the same cost basis across all measures. Again, we received a lot of public comment on this, and I think that some agencies even were confused about how this was being done previously. So we're really happy to be in partnership with our local agencies and stakeholders and members here today on those capital and administrative changes. So at this point, I think, what slide are we on? Yeah, at this point, you've seen both alternatives that are being presented on operating assistance. I think I just want to emphasize that both deliver a more predictable and performance-oriented formula. And the department's ultimate recommendation is alternative 1 because we believe it's clearer, simpler, and more responsive to actual service delivery. That being said, we were happy to present alternative 2 as well, because if agencies and the members of TSDAC prefer having a little bit more cushion and less immediate response, immediate predictability, but a little bit more a softer cushion and understanding that 3 years of their data will always be averaged on the 5% performance side, DRPT would support that as well. So Zach, you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, I would note very quickly, we were able to get that document out in the chat if you all wanted to see the comments, or
Oh,
any of the
great.
public want to look more at the comments.
So we put in the chat the summary of all the public comments for everyone's view. We had sent out, obviously, the comments we had when the materials went out, but as I mentioned in the beginning, we received a lot of letters just on Friday, or a handful of letters on Friday, so we wanted to make sure everyone had the summary up front. So at this point, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it back over to you, because I don't know if there are questions or more discussion you'd like to have before you pose alternatives 1 and 2 to the members for a vote, but we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the overview and for the material. I know it was a challenge getting things out to us so quickly so that we could hold this meeting today. Let me just suggest a way of moving forward on this, recognizing that we don't have a statutory role in the capital side of things, but that I think there is interest in at least commenting on that. And I didn't see a lot of discussion of that in some of the comments that were received. Maybe because we don't have that statutory role, or maybe because it seems to satisfy folks. I guess I'd want to ask if there is a general consensus about what we would like to do on the merit side, on the capital side, rather. I'm sorry. Any member want to?
So I'm just happy to get back to a theme that was found in many of the comments, and of course, want to represent several of the letters that came in were representing multiple transit systems, was the speed at which things were put out and put in for public comment. I appreciate Director Robinson's mentioning of starting this process in March, but I do want to make sure for the record, the first time proposals were presented to this body was in late July. And so I know there's been an incredible amount of work behind the scenes by the staff and the consultants. So perhaps DRPT staff were more up to speed 3 or 4 months before the rest of us. But the rest has been sort of coming out a little bit like a fire hose. I think that definitely one of the themes, and I appreciate the director speaking to it, is that people seem to like, oh, okay. Maybe this is going in the right direction. I think the challenges, and I'll put the capital along with the operating as a package, is the incredible hastiness in which this was presented, make it very difficult for us to look holistically. So I personally would rather think of these together. Maybe they're both phenomenal presentations and approaches, but I think there's too many flaws in the ability to get meaningful feedback that's understandable in both of these for me to see how we should bifurcate them. To me, they're a part of the same process. So that's my 30 seconds worth.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Any other comments? Brian? No.
Yeah, I would just ask the question, what is the harm in taking additional time to review? Because I too agree with Kate. I felt like we've been drinking from a fire hose the last few months, and even over the weekend trying to prepare for the meeting, I went back and listened to all of the TSDAC meetings online just to try to regroup and sort of get my mind wrapped around how we got to this point. And a lot of it's a lot clearer now, but at the time during those meetings, it was coming at us, and we were receiving new information all throughout each of the meetings, and it never felt like we were fully understanding what we were being presented with at the time it was being presented.
Well, I guess I'll ask Director Robinson about the question that you raised at the beginning, Brian.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to comment briefly on all of that, because I do want to make sure that the members remember that from March to June, July, we had our consultants briefing the TSDAC in every single meeting on our goals for the process and along the way with what we were working on. Part of the difficulty in this process was simply the complexity of where the formula was to start with. And our staff, who are the administrators of the program and who are really the only people that see how it's implemented statewide across all the different types of programs every single day, they had the insight to understand the volatility and the unintended consequences. And it proved more difficult, I think, than we expected to relay that information to members and stakeholders when oftentimes representatives are looking at one agency and have a harder time seeing what our team sees statewide. So that's why in the beginning, when I mentioned the comments about doing this, working together going forward, we totally understand and want to do that. This was a process by which I don't know that we could have done it any differently. And so that's why we feel really comfortable. And all of the comments we've received thus far on capital and administrative have been positive. We haven't received any pushback whatsoever. And my understanding is that previously there were no formal recommendations from the TSDAC on capital. It was only on operating. That being said, if this group wishes to take a position, and we have put it all together for transparency anyway. So we support whatever the will of the body is. In terms of Brian's question to what is the harm in waiting, I think in a previous meeting, Zach laid out the timeline of kind of what our department does on an annual basis. And I will tell you that we are already, just as you are, in budget crunch time. We are about ready to be receiving all of our applications and scoring and putting together our 6-year improvement plan and traveling all over the entire state for those public hearings. It is very, very difficult during that December, January, February, March timeframe to do almost anything else. And so that being said, since we have had 10 months of this comprehensive work, and we know our staff and our consultants do not feel that there is any additional scenario that could necessarily be run based on what we've heard with the data that we currently have. And therefore, that's why we feel really strongly that we just don't want to lose momentum. We don't want to say, okay, let's wait 6 months, and come 6 months, everybody's in a different place and data has changed, and the process might be in a situation where we're starting all over and everyone's asking for additional time again. So we think it's important enough to make these changes because we think it makes the whole formula fairer for the entire state. We think it improves formulas minimally. And when I say that, I like the margin of change is on average plus or minus like 1 to 3% for agencies. So I also wanted to put that out there because I don't want anyone to be thinking that this is an enormous change. This is truly a fine tuning of the current formula. It is not a reworking of the formula. So for all of those reasons, it's our recommendation that we move forward.
Any other comments?
John, I would welcome a chance.
Yes, Cindy, go right ahead.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's hard to see the digital's hands when you're trying to have a shared screen. Okay, so a couple thoughts, some of which are to the first question of capital and then the bigger picture, I guess. One, I do think capital had more consensus. It's still a process, quick process, but it's less complex. So I would support and be okay with a recommendation on capital. I realize state code doesn't put capital in the same category as operating, but TSDAC historically has looked at the whole picture, the formulas for both capital and operating, because they do intertwine with each other. And we have made statements and recommendations on that. The administrative piece, I do know, obviously, we do not have any statutory regulatory on that, but we have worked collaboratively with DRPT over the years and through this process. So I would welcome the TSDAC making a comment or statement towards that. The operating, and so I guess I would want separate votes because on the operating, it is more complex. I do think there is a process difference, whether it's the number of months or meetings. Our key stakeholders that we represent do not feel like there's been adequate time for their input. And I think that's a really important fact that we need to acknowledge and address. I think part of it is there was a lot of work upfront by DRPT and the consultants before it came to TSDAC, which is different than in the past. In the past, we would have been engaged. We're going to do it. Here's the goals, agree or not agree. And then here's some scenarios. We got recommendations and then had to ask for additional scenarios because we had questions and we wanted to understand it. We wanted to do our due diligence, which for better or worse, you all have gotten from us since 2013, 14. So I feel like that's the part that felt rushed is from July on, all of a sudden we got good analysis, but it is a lot to absorb and we wanted to do it right. So where I am right now is I would like to see the two separate votes with the support or not support on the administrative function. The operating does concern me for the process piece. I do think we're working off of old data, and I would like to see this run on new data as we got through a lot of our challenging environments of late and realizing there's always going to be challenges, but COVID and the federal impact are dramatic challenges. So I would like to wait till we have that new data. I would like, based on the quick absorption of the public comment, I would like to consider the grandfathering, hold harmless concept. And we have a really big new initiative, hopefully positive one, coming through SJ 28 with that General Assembly task force and recommendations and the work of this upcoming General Assembly. Because the bottom line with this process we're doing, as we've all said, the pie hasn't changed. So it's going to impact somebody. And I think we should be doing this after we see if the pie changes for the better, which I am optimistic with all the work that's been done and the work that will be coming up, that we can actually see more funding for transit. So those are my initial thoughts, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have other comments?
Just, Mr. Chair, this is Jamie. Just a quick follow-up on Cindy's questions or comments and Brian's. So if we did the review of the data at a later point, Cindy, would you recommend, similar to Brian, that we hold off on making a recommendation today? Or are you saying make the recommendation today and then use new data?
For me, I was coming with defer and delay taking action till we have the data.
Okay.
And coming back and looking at it.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that. So that's very helpful. I'll just say I represent DRPT. I don't represent myself, maybe unfortunately. But ultimately, I was a little bit concerned about the number of letters that we received with folks not having, not feeling that they were involved in the process or having enough information, even though there were those that supported the project moving forward. There were a considerable amount of folks that said they still needed more time. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Noel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo Jamie's comments about the comments that came in, people wanting it to be a more collaborative process. That's something I wanted to note. And I represent VTA, not HRT, but you know, there was a lot of concern at the VTA level. So just wanted to make those comments.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Brian, I saw your hand up for a moment.
Yes. I just went back in my emails and found that timeline that was sent out for the fiscal year 28 implementation. And I recognize that much of February through April or so is going to be consumed with DRPT staff looking at the FY27 allocation. So there's 2 or 3 months there that I recognize that there's not a lot of time for the DRPT staff to focus on coming back to this or continuing this conversation going forward. But the timeline for the FY28 implementation says that pretty much the October 1st of 2026 would be sort of that first marker of when that application process would kick off. And I recognize there is stuff that has to be done ahead of time to prepare the applications. But I think the concerning factor here is from what I'm hearing for all of us is it's the operating formula. It's not necessarily the capital piece. So I'm just not, maybe I'm missing the mark, but I'm just not seeing the rush to have a recommendation today when where we're all struggling with is the operating part.
Other comments? Anyone else want to weigh in?
Mr. Chair, can I jump in again one really quickly?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to follow up one last time on Brian's comment because it's a good one. And I totally understand that there's some confusion and some misunderstanding. I wanted to emphasize again that we have taken 10 straight months. When you take 4, 5, 6 months off, there really is a chance to lose momentum. And we have had a hard time making sure that all of our partners kind of remember and understand the current very complex formula and how it works and the volatility there. And then secondly, explaining and walking through possible revisions and scenarios. That has taken us a long time. Jumping back in after you take a long break almost starts the process all over again. The second thing I wanted to point out, and Zach may want to jump in because his team is more in the weeds on this than I am. But when we started this process and laid out a timeline, our staff reminded me that even though, your October is when we're kicking off the FY28 round, for example, months prior to that, our team, especially with a revised formula, would want to do a lot of education and webinars. We would be changing our applications. We would be changing our guidance. We would want to post all of that and really do a lot of education with partners ahead of time so they knew what was coming and what changes were there. Even running new scenarios with new data in webinars as we're coming upon a new implementation. That was the actual reason we started the process and planned for an FY28 implementation, because we wanted to make sure we built into the process enough time to do all of that. We didn't want to, vote to move forward with a new formula and then in a month or two later have everyone applying for it and not really truly understanding and grasping the changes. So with that comment, please move forward. I wanted to make sure everyone understood DRPT's perspective on that as well.
Thank you very much for that. Anyone else want to express an opinion, weigh in? Does anyone have a motion to present or a proposed action to take at this point?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Dyke.
Yeah, I've been listening pretty intently here, and most of the folks on the line do this on a daily basis and have a much, I think, probably more background in this area than I do. So I'm obviously very sensitive to their concerns. I'm usually the one who feels like if you're going to make a decision, just make it and move on. But to the extent that others have some unrest and have expressed some concern. I've seen this in some other areas that are going on at this point where people are concerned about making decisions before they feel as if everybody has had a chance to have an input and that have been digested. I'm a little leery about us trying to make a decision just for the purpose of making one. If in fact the people here who do this on a day-to-day basis think that they need a little more time to make a good judgment on this. So I'm somewhat leaning to respect that concern that they've raised, but obviously I will listen to my fellow board members as to what they think needs to be done.
Okay. Any other comments from board members?
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm just getting the sense that for us to be able to move on, we may want to may be helpful for me to make a motion that
think that'd
TSDAC does
probably
not
be-
recommend any action at this time.
Did you want to put any kind of parameters on that, or just say not take any action at this time? Do we want to have a kind of sense of the time that will be devoted to this?
Well, I think probably, and this is really to add on to what Brian and others have talked about, is that we appear to be, there's time obviously in advance of preparing for the 28 cycle. And so to me, a recommendation that, again, this is about TSDAC, that we do not recommend any action at this time pending further analysis prior to the FY28 application period. Does that, I'm happy to have others sort of modify the action. I'm trying to keep it fairly broad, understanding we want to have flexibility. Right.
Yeah, I think you've raised a good point about whether or not there needs to be some sort of time frame. If you're going to decide to put this off, I don't want to say indefinitely. I think we need to be very, very focused on when you're going to make a decision. As I said earlier, I'm the kind of guy who likes to, if you're going to have to make a decision, go ahead and make it and move on. But I think we need to have some parameters if, in fact, we're going to decide not to decide today. We need to at least have some idea of when we are going to make a decision. And that's going to force people, to the extent that they have questions or concerns, to get them up and raised and resolved so we can make an intelligent decision.
Very good. I support that.
I saw
Chair?
Cindy.
Thank you. I support where Kate's heading in terms of moving us forward in the comments about a timeline. I think that is prudent so that we're ready for FY28. So looking at the calendar, I was going to propose, we think June, we'll be through the General Assembly. We'll know whether we have new money or not. DRPT will know their budget allocations and the priority funds and all that good stuff. So I put it out there as a date. I do think we have all key stakeholders totally engaged now. I know there's a risk of momentum, but I don't think we'll lose momentum, because what are we going to be talking about through the whole General Assembly, SJ 28 and transit funding? And I know our operators and all of the entities we represent statewide and regionally will be tracking this. I think then we can address grandfathering, hold harmless of funding, because we will know whether or not we have more funding or not to this pie, which my fingers and toes and eyes are all crossed that the answer will be yes, because of its importance. So the only question I would have for our DRPT colleagues is, if we did decision by June, will you have the data we need for another year of fiscal analysis for us to look at? Because for me, that also helps me with the 1 year, 3 year smoothing averaging question too. Thanks.
We use annual audits. I mean, if I could just use annual audits, so, whenever they come out. So it's usually a 2-year lag, just factual basis, obviously, given the timing. So for 27, we'll be using fiscal year 25's audit, 28, 26. There will be some, keep it up with the time of will the new, for Northern Virginia specifically, will the return to office and all that kind of stuff be reflected? I guess that's what you're interested in. So,
and for most of us, the audits have to be done by December.
Correct.
And released 30 days and posted to the state within 30 days of completion. Right. So which middle of the year should work. There will always be some unknowns. That's our world, and that's why you all have been trying to work on predictability and so forth.
For fall of 26, those and the actual calendar year of fall of 26, that will be the 26 fiscal year audit should be completed, correct?
And as far as performance data goes too, we'll have FY26 performance data. That'll all be due to us by, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe we'll have it by August 1st.
That's correct. But that is in its raw format. And so we do go through a QC process. But yes, we will have that data at least to incorporate. But the financials we will have only for FY25, which we are using in the upcoming fiscal year cycle.
Okay. Brian, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in and say that I support the direction that Kate and Cindy are sort of forming this motion. And my intent when I asked the question, what's the harm in taking time and slowing this down a little bit, was not to take a pause, but more so continue the conversation and be a little more structured in the meetings that we have, and the timeline of that, because that's another thing for me personally, and I don't know how others have felt, but I've felt the scheduling of the meetings have been, for me personally, have been a little frustrating because they've been somewhat last minute. The solicitation has gone out anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days in advance of the actual meeting getting scheduled, and my calendar stacks up pretty far in advance, and the further out that I can get something on the calendar and block off around it, the better I am, and the more I'm able to devote to prepare and be up to speed on what's going to be presented at that particular meeting. And unfortunately, just the way the timing of the meetings happened this year, I wasn't able to do that ahead of time. And I, in preparing for this meeting, I looked back at how this process, the planning of the meetings played out in 2022 when we went through the review. And in that period, we actually established a regular recurring monthly meeting. It was the second Friday of every month, and the intent was to be in person. And the majority of those meetings were held in person until we got to the summer months and schedules got a little more challenging. But I would hope that we would look to doing something like that over the next 6 months if we were to move forward in this fashion.
All right, thank you, Brian. I think Kate had her hand up as well.
Just to further to amplify what Brian was saying, I think that might get lost, and really this is for the benefit of all of those listening. Many of us, actually most of us on TSDAC are actually representing associations. And so Noelle and I, for example, are representing the Virginia Transit Association. And so when we receive the meeting materials, we absorb. In an ideal space, which had not happened this year, we're going back to VTA members to getting feedback and input. And so having real-time turnaround or getting things on a Friday for a Monday meeting makes that near impossible. So I think that probably feeds into the frustration that we've seen in a number of the comments that are provided, is that we're not just represent our individual organizations, we're actually just representing the Commonwealth. That's why we're sitting on this board. So I do appreciate, and Brian, thank you for reminding, because that did work very well. We knew it was TSDAC day. We already knew to look for the things a week ahead. We've already planned the pre-meetings with the people we need to vet things with, so that we could actually come prepared to represent who we were representing, not just ourselves or even our transit agencies, but to those. And so, again, I think there's some incredible opportunities to continue the momentum as we go in. I do want to also go back and say, I don't say that these are good or bad recommendations. What I say is I don't think they've had time to fully vet and understand. There might be some absolute brilliance in here. And I do want to say, you know, the work of the DRPT staff and their support. I know they have worked many, many hours. We just want to be a part of understanding that. I think that just needs a little bit more time.
Okay, any other comments from members? Cindy?
I think one of the things that I picked up from the comments, besides the process, there were some intriguing ideas, like the tiering, like the grandfathering, and those we can't make a decision on today, and they would need DRPT's consideration and for us to explore it. And so that is also feeding into me. I want to be responsive to the public comment. You don't just do a 45-day public comment because the code says we do. We do it because there's value in that input. And it's kind of fun being on this side of the table instead of the staffer feeding my city council members. You know, we wouldn't give them last minute comments and ask them to react on a Monday if they got it on a Sunday. So putting all that in mind, don't want to lose the momentum, do want to look at the content, which generally I think it's heading in the right direction, as Director Robinson indicated, but we need to make sure the process is sound. And fortunately, we don't do it really heavy a lot. And granted, this isn't what we did in 2018 or even 2022, but it's still really important and has an impact on our operators and the importance of transit in the Commonwealth. And I do realize that no matter what we do today, it's an advisory recommendation and something will be presented to the CTB. I hope it would be considered favorably, but it may still proceed. So whether it does or not, I'm still in this for the long haul and will continue to work it. But I do hope that it gets delayed into the next summer months, depending on what this final motion reads. Thanks.
All right, so as I understand, the motion would be to defer final consideration of a recommendation to a point certain in 2026, and I would suggest that just based on what I've heard before, June 30, 2026.
I think that sounds pretty good, sir.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, with a time certain, with it made clear that we're going to go up or down one way or the other on that one. We're not going to continue to kick this can down the road here.
And I think I would just add, I think the caveat to that is like no later than June 30th. If we feel comfortable by March, then we can take that action then.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Accept that as a friendly motion amendment.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any other comments or questions? Any reaction from staff, from the director?
Well, I will jump in and just end the same way I started by thanking everybody. It has been a lot of work. And so I appreciate the deliberations and the perspectives and the input from every single member of this committee, and as well as all of our partners who provided public comment, who we met with, who we talked to at conferences and on webinars and multiple calls. So that's the most important thing I want to say is thank you. I do want to throw out there also, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very busy time coming up for us. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. But certainly we want to take into consideration the recommendations of this advisory committee. I know that at one point in time, there was some complaining about meetings during the summer. So we didn't want to do that again. We wanted to, try to complete this. But that being said, and there was also a mention about taking into consideration public comments that have come in on certain things like tiering. And I wanted to remind the group that we considered tiering at the very beginning. And we talked with our consultants, talked to all of you about some of the things we were looking at, things we could and things we could not do. and the consultants, in conjunction with all of our transit staff, concluded that we absolutely are not in a place with the data that we collect, whether it be enough from every single transit agency or reliable, in order to put agencies into buckets or tiers. So we look forward to collecting more data in the future and looking at that. But this was meant to be a first step. So with that, again, thank you all and for all of the work and all of the recommendations.
Yeah, and Kate, would you be amenable to amending your motion to include a recognition that we recognize the great work that is going into this by the staff, and that they've done a terrific job, and that this decision to delay a decision is not reflective of what was provided and the job that they did, but reflects our view that we want to make sure that we've considered everything before we make a final decision, because as Tiffany said, a lot of work went into this, and we want to commend the staff for doing that. And Tiffany, one other thing, having been in public service for a number of years, no matter what you do or how hard you work, you're never going to make everybody happy. So I learned a long time ago not to worry about that. I'll do the best I can do, and then, let the chips fall where they may. So thank you for all your effort and your staff's effort. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
And I concur.
And Chair, that was going to be similar to the comment I wanted to make before we called for a vote, is whatever the outcome of this is, I do want there to be a rationale or a write-up that kind of explains those points in our deliberations and the reason why, let's say if this does pass, that we're recommending deferral. So that could be part of the record that's transmitted to CTB with the DRPT staff report that will go to workshop and then action.
Okay, so let me
and
just
I'm glad to help the chair with that if desired.
Thank you very much. So, and so what I'm understanding is that we will have a resolution, and I would just like to make that a very simple resolution, that TSDAC is not making a recommendation today on adjustments to the formula due to in order to receive further comment, information, and evaluation, and will provide a recommendation prior to June 30th, 2026. I would suggest that that be stated as the resolution, but that there be an accompanying statement expressing our appreciation for the information and addressing why TSDAC would need to move in that direction. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a resolution on the floor, and I would ask that should we do a roll call on this?
You want to do a
Is that the
second
best way to do
first?
this? I'm sorry?
Do you want to do a second? I'll second that.
Yes, sure. Okay.
For
All right,
formality.
thank you, Brendan. So the motion is from Kate,
Yes, sir.
seconded by Brian. Okay. And let me see if I can get everyone down here. I suppose I could just ask if there is any objection on the part of members of TSDAC.
Mr. Chair, this is Jamie. I will not be at the next TSDAC meeting, so I'm actually going to abstain from this vote.
Okay.
So I will note an abstention as opposed to voting yes or no.
All right. So I will assume then that we have unanimity with one abstention.
Yes, sir.
Agree.
Okay, great. Thank you. And that, I think, then brings us to some next steps that we will need. And I would suggest that the next steps should involve an opportunity for those who have commented and others who have not yet commented on the proposal to provide more detailed suggestions, questions, recommendations, recognizing that I know there was some talk about the challenge of meeting during the summertime. This is important work. And so I would strongly suggest that we find time if there are questions and concerns that we want to have addressed so that we can put more of that into place earlier rather than later.
I second that wholeheartedly, because when we meet again, I'm prepared to vote. So if you're going to have something to say, let's get it in now and get this done one way or the other.
Thank you, Mr. Dyke. All right. And let me, again, on behalf of TSDAC, express our appreciation for all the hard work and for the willingness of leadership to take into account the concerns that are being expressed here and to strive to get a proposal that can be clear and understandable, whether everyone agrees with the particular outcome or not, so that everyone understands that it was arrived at in a way that allowed full exposure of the proposal and full opportunities for comment and suggested revision. Really do appreciate all of the hard work that everybody has put into this, and I know that that becomes a bit of a challenge. Sort of reminds me of the way we have the Electoral College. Everybody assumes that they're going to be hurt by a change in the formula, so everybody supports it. It can't possibly be the case that everyone loses in a situation like that, but we still have the same Electoral College, don't we? Anyway. Anyway, further comments? Anybody have anything else they'd like to add to our discussion today? I think Cindy and I will work with DRPT to think about how to arrange for a meeting schedule so that we can get that information out and hopefully at least try to have the option of getting together in person so that I'm not just looking at 1.5 by 1 inch squares and or rectangles, and we can benefit from that exposure. And Jamie, is that my understanding that you'll be leaving TSDAC?
Yes, sir.
Well, certainly.
Yeah, I've already let DRPT know, so you'll have a new representative that can participate in the fund.
Great. And congratulations to you on whatever is next. But we will miss having your voice here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Concur.
Yeah. Good luck to you.
Anything else for the good?
I was just going to say the fact that her name is Jamie is our oldest daughter's Jamie too, so I wish her even more success.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, she's a great William and Mary graduate, and that's the important thing.
Go Tribe, yes.
Chair, if I could ask one quick
Sure.
timing question. When does the meeting materials go to the CTB so we can back up a timing? Because ideally, I'd love to work with the chair and DRPT in writing the resolution or write-up, but also get it back to TSDAC to review before we issue it. And I know we squeezed this meeting in timing, but like when does the packet go out for CTB?
Right, yeah. We were also talking about next week as a possible meeting date. So I assume we've got a few days.
Mr. Chair, I'll jump in just to make sure Cindy knows the CTB meeting is December 9th. We get outreach from VDOT and coordination on when they want materials. They oftentimes try to get materials out a week in advance. Sometimes it is shorter than that for CTB as well. But we can certainly keep this body posted on anything we send any type of briefing we send to CTB if you'd like.
Thank you. That would be great.
Sure.
All right. Any other items to come before us? Chair Robinson, Director Robinson? Anything
No,
else?
again, I just thank everyone for your hard work and look forward to getting some meaningful improvements in this program in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your input, for your thoughtful discussion, and for coming to the meeting today. So with that, I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, and you should expect to receive a draft from the Vice Chair and me shortly. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Move.
All right,
Second.
moved and seconded by.
Non-debatable.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
We have lots to be grateful for, including TSDAC and formulas.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.